Good morning, everyone. I'm Barb Riley. I'm president and CEO of the Ad Club. I've been doing this now for about 18 months. You may have known me from another life, which was Arnold and other things, including Fractional CMO. I am one of the gig economy members. I am so thrilled to have you all here today. Quick intro before we jump into the content, because the content is going to be 90% of this. It's going to be a great conversation. We decided to do this because the world has changed a lot. And when I first did contract work, now whether you're on the title of freelancer, contractor, consultant, part-timer, independent, just an individual worker, that's the gig economy. And today the gig economy represents 35% of the workforce, which is really kind of mind-boggling. When I started doing it a long, long time ago, I did it out of necessity. I was laid off from Ingalls, Quinn & Johnson. It was crushing, devastating, and I stayed silent. But it used to have a stigma attached to it. And so we've gone from stigma to star. I think that the world has changed so much that anybody who's a member of the gig economy is lucky because they're chosen. It's not something that happened to you. It's something that you make happen. And I think that you need to reframe it. If you're wondering, do I do this or not? It's a whole new world. And by 2030, they're saying this gig economy is going to be 50% of the talent pool, not just for marketing, in general. So we at the Ad Club decided this was something really important for us to do to represent the full marketing ecosystem. The ecosystem has changed, and this is a part of it. And we weren't really offering anything for anyone in this gig economy. So we decided that this was the time to do it. So Courtney's going to talk about that later. What are we doing? But we would love to hear from you what you want. The whole premise is give people what they need and what they want to thrive in this industry, and that's the plan. So when you think about the gig economy, before it was, again, not a great thing to be in. Now it is. There are LinkedIn groups for it. There are recruiters doing just that. There are new titles that are cropping up that sound so much fancier, like fractional. Chris and I had a conversation once that nobody knew what the word fractional was. When I first used it in 2017, people were like, what? And I heard it from a private equity guy who was in the process of trying to hire someone to represent his portfolio of brands and said, I can only give 20% of your time to this brand, 10% of your time to this brand, 15% of your time, and I'm fractioning out your time. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I want to be a fractional CMO. So now that word, you see it everywhere. Everybody talks about it. And before it was like only 7 years ago, 8 years ago, it was like, what? So I think these new titles are starting to show the power of this industry is taking off. And we hope we give you today a chance to learn more about it and ask questions that might help you in that business. Show of hands, how many of you are currently in the gig economy? All of you. Would I assume the rest of you are thinking it over, curious about it? Show of hands, thinking about it. Okay, a couple. And then maybe recruiters or somebody who is looking for talent like this. Anyway, we're going to be jumping in now. I want to give you a lay of the land. On the two tables immediately to my left are those members of the panel that represent the gig economy. They are different roles and responsibilities within the gig economy, different tenure, different reasons why. And on the last table are those who are in the hiring, recruiting area for that. We're going to start with these two tables and then go to the third table and then do Q&A for everybody. So we'll move through the questions and you'll wonder why these three are silent in the beginning. It's intentional, but then trust me, they will not be silent. All right, so I'm going to start it up. Thank you for being here. Courtney will get up at the end and explain a little bit more about the membership and what we can do, but just keep in mind, we'd like to hear from you as well. So let's get going. Each person from my left on, we'll start with you, Rachel. Could you please share a little bit about your name, your background, and what you're doing today, but about a minute each.
Hello. My name is Rachel. I've been freelance copywriting for about 5 years on my own. Before that, I was on the brand side. I worked at A6 on the creative team. And you'll notice that my trajectory is a little different than everyone else's because I left very early. I just wasn't feeling creatively fulfilled. So I started freelancing just started collecting clients while I was working on the A6 team, and then made the jump when I felt confident making enough money to do so. And I've been kind of working in tandem in the beauty industry and in the sports industry. So I've worked with brands like Living Proof and Neutrogena, and then the NBA and the PGA and the Tennessee Titans. So I think it's really fulfilling, creatively, obviously, financially. It has its ups and its downs, but overall, I think it was a great choice for me.
Hi, I'm Fernando Pino. I'm a freelance art director and designer. I've been working for about 7 years freelance and started probably about 10 years in different agencies. Yeah, I now currently work with a lot of different brands out in LA, and probably most notably Acura, working with Mattel and Hot Wheels, and I do a lot of brand work for a lot of those kinds of clients. So.
Hey everyone, I'm Chris Greene. I've been a fractional marketer for 3.5 years now. I used to work on the agency side, and now I work with clients like Elton John AIDS Foundation and Ameriprise Financial, and then a couple of startups in Boston. In addition to that, I also launched a company in September. And another thing, I launched a company in September called YoPro. And the mission for YoPro is to help Gen Z get the job skills they need to enter the job market. So we'll talk a little bit about how the marketing has afforded me to also pursue other interests.
Good morning. My name is Armin Molavi. I am the founder of I'm in the Lobby, which is a marketing consultancy. I've been doing it for about 5 years now. Prior to this, I was on the agency side for about 20 years, 10 of which here at Digitas, not here, but Digitas, and 10 of which at Havas. And then I also was on the brand side at Hilton for about 3 years, where I was the global head of media. Yeah, and I just picked up my 28th client yeah, thanks, Barb. Yeah, so yeah, we'll talk more.
Testing. Does it work? Okay. So I'm Whitney Clarke. My focus as a fractional leader is actually a brand strategy lead. So I traditionally, like my sweet spot has been helping companies who kind of reach a snarl or a weird inflection point in their growth. They get stuck. And so as a brand strategy leader, I've helped them redefine their purpose so they understand how to impact the greater good in a different, more positive way. You know, obviously improve and deepen their connections with people, to unlock new opportunities for revenue growth, and also to improve shareholder value. So in my career, I've done it at CVS. I led the initiative to exit tobacco and reposition CVS to CVS Health. That was in 2013, 2014. I did it again at Athena Health, where between transactions, I helped them reposition the company to optimize their valuation. And I've now been a fractional leader for 2 years at the same time as I'm launching a brand in beauty.
Hi, everyone. My name's Neeta Goplani, and I'm the founder of a neuro CX consultancy called Circle and Square. For everyone here, it's in the UX space. Prior to that, I was in Digitas for 10 years. Again, not this office. Hi to some of the Digitas folks. Loved it here. And then after that, I moved to John Hancock, Manulife. I was leading their UX departments. And my last role was the global head of experience design strategy, and actually the whole of customer experience. And I made a choice to then go fractional. And I've been doing this for 2.5 years. On my 5th client right now. So
I think I have one. Yeah. So hi, I'm Dorothy Urlich, and I am currently with Hatch, the agency. I'm running the talent side of our business, and our founder had an idea to take 2 businesses, a consultative talent placement firm and a branding creative shop, and put them together into one agency. So that's what we're doing. We're calling it an adaptive agency. And what we're able to do is really put together customized teams for our clients for whatever our clients need at that time. And that could mean that it could mean they don't even need us and they just need a freelancer, in which place we would find that person for them. So I think I've had lots of jobs before this. I've worked in big agencies and small startup agencies and 2 stints on the client side. But I've always been a champion of creatives and the work they produce. And that's, I feel like, what I'm best known for in marketing. But super excited to do this. I've been a full-on recruiter now for 3 years, but lots in the 25 years before that where I got to recruit, but not like this. So.
Hello? I always want to sing when I have one of these.
Go for it.
No, definitely not. The sparkles are enough this morning. We're not going to torture you with that. Morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Wilkins. I am here today to represent, I guess, recruiters. Have been doing this for a very long time. You may or may not know me. Digitalize used to be an old client of mine. I was at Onward Search for a spell until I went client side because I felt like staffing agencies was very transactional and I wanted to build companies with people. So started out with a startup called Mobiquity and then went to a small place called Dun & Bradstreet. And then most recently was hired into IBM iX Studio, where I was charged to staff up their UX departments until we all got laid off in 2023, 8,000 of us. And so I took some time to reflect and figure out what is it I want to do next. So I started my own company. I just landed my first client. Wait till they get their invoice. But so it's called TADA, your Talent Acquisition Design Advisors, and I help small companies with expertise in searching for UX leaders and creative leaders. So talking about staffing. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michele Corcoran. I am a resource manager and an operations lead, mostly for ad agencies. What I focus on is flex staffing models and recruitment, as well as demand forecasting and the hiring and management of freelancers, subcontractors, and vendors. I started my career at BBDO in New York. I then moved back to Massachusetts, where I worked at Hill Holliday, then Arnold, and most recently with a pharma biotech ad agency called Precision AQ. So I have hired a lot of freelance talent in my day. Been recruiting for about 10 years in that space. So I'm excited to join the panel and share a little bit of what I've learned along the way with all of you.
Thank you all. All-star lineup. All right, we're going to get into some questions that might be on your mind or might be things that you can relate to. And the first question is, again, this is now just for these 2 tables to start. I'd like to just get at that moment. What was the moment or the reason, the factors at play that made the decision for you to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to go out and be independent, contractor, freelance, whatever you call yourself. I'm going to start with you, Chris. You want to talk a little bit about that moment and just, tell us a story, but not a 10-minute story.
All right, I understand the assignment. So I started my company because I got laid off. And simply put, I was pissed. And I needed to channel that energy into something else. And I was thinking about what do I want to do in the future? What do I want to, have for my career? And immediately I went back to the box of, okay, you're going to go work at another agency. You're going to get a job here. You're going to work in financial services and you're going to follow the same roadmap. And then actually Stephanie said to me, she's like, you've always wanted to do your own thing. You should. And then I thought about what I could do. And I thought about my capabilities. And to be honest with you, like fractional CMO is used a lot. And I very purposely call myself a fractional marketer. There are things that I do on Ameriprise and Elton John that I'm very familiar with, like the agency world, like account director work. But then and I mean like trafficking out spots and getting some ISKI codes out there. That's like one part of it, but those are really good clients to have. Then I work with startups and what I need to do with them is help them make like $1 look like 5. So I'll go in, they don't have a marketing team. I'll help them think about how they structure it, talk about their go-to-market plans. And the thing that makes me unique, and I've always had this in my career, is like, I don't believe in complexity. Like if you're using a lot of jargon and a lot of buzzwords, it makes me think like you don't know what you're talking about. So I found with founders in particular, that's my sweet spot because you walk into the room and you have to be able to say in 6 seconds what you're going to be doing. And I think the soul searching, and I'm landing the plane in a second, I'm rounding third. The soul searching that I took was thinking about when I lost my job, I thought I'm missing out. But then someone said to me, your intelligence still stays in your head. You just need to go apply it somewhere else. So then I realized that taking the first step was the hardest. And we'll talk about the pipeline. That's a grind, as you all know. But it's been a great journey. And then it afforded me to then say, and look at opportunities and say, there's a problem and a crisis happening with Gen Z. Everyone's punching down and telling them they're stupid and worthless. And then my business partner, Trish O'Leary, and I were like, there's an opportunity here. So we launched a company. I would have never been able to do that if I was still working in a corporate environment. And that's what excites me about this.
I think those pivot moments, they feel scary until the clouds part and you start to see what you really can do. The possibilities become clear.
Yeah, and if you have a good group around you, you fire the villains and you just have good people around you that support you, it's unbelievable.
Fire the villains. Write that one down. All right, let's go to Whitney. Why don't you tell us that pivot moment that you made this decision to go into the gig economy?
I would say it's not so dissimilar from Chris. For me, it was heartbreak. My last company I was working at full time was a company that had a huge purpose, and I was there to kind of help them grow it. And candidly, they were shuttering. What was clear is they were just on their way down when I joined. And that's what happened to them ultimately. And so for me, it was just heartbreak. It feels like failure sometimes when the company that you're working for doesn't work, especially if you're hired to help them grow. In that time, I think it was just everything caught up to me over what felt like, 20 years of intense stress and pressure. I think that burnout would be too simple to say. I think it was a little bit of pissed. It was a little bit of burnout. It was a little bit of just sadness, where I just felt like I'm pouring myself into these companies and giving away all my magic and all my juice. And for what? And so at that moment, when I was leaving that company, I decided I was going to take a step back, really do some soul searching about what I wanted next in my career, knowing that I collected some amazing tools at some amazing companies. And I see a lot of friendly faces here that I know I've worked with, who I know I've worked with. But and I decided that, what, I've always wanted to build something. It gave me the space and time to decide I've always wanted to build something, like now or never. I'm about to be 49 and I was maybe 47 when I made this decision. And it's like, if it doesn't happen now, when is it going to happen? So I decided to pour myself into building something and being the ultimate marketer with no one to answer to, no one playing creative director or marketing leader, and be a marketing leader, a creative director, but also a founder, and bring all these tools to bear at the same time as taking on clients in the kind of work that I love most. So for me, it was a little bit of everything. And it was just that step back in space I very much needed at the time.
Whitney, can I since I'm the moderator, I can sort of interject questions as I see fit. And you said something that I had written down a little bit of a comment on, and I don't know if anybody feels this way, but when you have the safety of a company around you and all those resources around you, and when you are in a world where you've grown up, just let me go to that person because I know they can help me with that answer. There is a degree to which it's all eyes on you and you have to be the authority. Is there ever a moment where you're like, shit, can I do this? Did you feel that way? Because you just talked about, I took that step. Is that something you felt? I'm just curious.
I definitely felt that there is this, you get your first client and then you forget, or maybe you sell the capabilities that you're capable of when you're working as a team. Does that make sense? And there's amazing ways to work in this gig economy where you can assemble a really powerful team without having full-timers around you as part of an organization or an agency. But there definitely were times where all of a sudden you're like, who's doing the meeting? Oh, I'm doing the meeting. Who is, kind of sending that invoice, and who's doing the follow-up, and who's managing every step of that process. And it is very humbling because it reminds you, number one, the role that everyone plays in a team and how important those roles have been throughout your career, and just that moment of gratitude. But it really is far more time and energy consuming than maybe you realize, because you are playing every role. So I'd say that first client is a real eye opener. And that's probably that moment of realization for me. And a lot of, again, humbleness and gratitude for the people that I've worked with in the past to realize it really does typically take a team. And thank goodness for the gig economy, because we have amazing networks here in Boston. Attending events like this is incredible. So there are times where I have called Armin, or called others in my network to ask for help. And that's been incredibly valuable.
Great. Thank you. Neeta, I'll go to you now, and then I'll come back to this side of the table.
So mine was a little different story, and I tell this to people, you know, growing up, and I think it's an Indian thing. So growing up, it was all about like study hard and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and I was so hyper focused on just like growing in my career. And my last role, which at Manulife was the global head, and I remember thinking, I was like, "Ooh, I'm closer to my, you know, like the goal and the reach of it." And I had an identity crisis because I just wasn't feeling right about it. I was like, this does not feel like I've arrived. And it took a lot of soul searching there. I'm like, why doesn't it feel right? Like, what about it is missing? And it was, you know, I was lucky to have a friend there who made me do this whole visioning exercise around like, when was the last time you felt super energized? What drains you? And what I realized is I want to be close to the work. Like I want to touch the work. And in my last role, I was so removed from that work. And that's what I did. I was like, if I really need to get close to the work and kind of make the money that I was used to, I think I just have to go out on my own. So I think that was a pivotal moment. It was super scary to do that as well, because I don't know if I told you, Barb, my husband's a freelancer as well. So we are like, we have 2 kids and we have 2 mortgages and we're both going to make the jump. And it was, again, I think, you know, and we can get into this later, there were a few exercises that I did to really feel comfortable to make that jump. So that helped. And that was the moment.
That helps. I'm going to go to Rachel and then Fernando.
Okay, when I was at A6 on the brand side, as a creative, I feel like it's a cool experience being on one brand because you get to know the brand so incredibly well, but at the same time, it gets very stagnant very fast. And I found myself kind of getting through my work and then just sitting at my desk until 5 when I was allowed to leave. And it just like wasn't really creatively fulfilling. And it's such a subjective industry that you have one boss, and if they don't like your work, that's kind of the box that you're confined to. And I had a couple friends who were freelancing who were like one day meeting with this client and the next day going to this workspace and kind of just dancing all over the city, and it just looked so amazing. And as a 23-year-old, as a 23-year-old, I was just like, I'm making no money. What's the big risk if I give this a try? And I just feel like it's been so much more fulfilling. And I made so much more money that first year because you don't really realize how little value they put on like a young creative brand or agency. So it was really empowering. And as a freelancer, you definitely like every minute you're working, you're making money, and every minute you're not. So it kind of like was like a driver versus sitting at an office until 5. Money's in your account, I guess, but like you're not really seeing the work be fulfilled. So it's been so much more creatively empowering, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I think that pivot point was kind of feeling like I reached a ceiling in terms of how much I was learning. And so it felt like I wasn't really learning anything new. And I kind of kept going through clients and work and just not feeling fulfilled, like many of us here. But when I decided to leave, I knew I was going to work a lot harder, actually. And that was a big thing for me. But I was sort of ready for that mentally. But I also wanted to like work on my craft a little bit. It kind of sounds a little cheesy, but what I did was that I wanted to work more in the music industry, and I didn't have any music work. And I decided to make an album cover every single day for a year. And that really taught me design, even though I had been doing it for 10 years. And it wasn't until I was able to really try things that weren't told to me is where I really learned how to design, I think. So yeah, it was really difficult. I kind of like to talk about what I make because I think it's important for people to know. The first year, I just wanted to break even with my past job. I did not do that by like $5,000 or something like that. I had made 110 grand at the previous agency, but year 2, I made over $300,000 just by myself. And that to me is a big driver. Obviously, nobody likes to talk about money, but I think it's really important for a lot of freelancers to just know what the potential is, and you know what kind of range you could actually be earning, because a lot of people don't like to talk about it. So yeah, that was kind of it for me. Yeah.
As the senior in this crowd of fractional people, I'll do a quickie. 2017, 21-year career at Arnold. I levitated out of my chair in an agency meeting, never believing that day when I walked in that I would be resigning. Something happened. It triggered me, probably building up more than I had any idea. And I went and wrote my resignation letter, called my husband and said, do you mind if I resign today? And he said, I will cartwheel through the halls if you do. And with that kind of support, I gave my notice that day, to the shock of many who thought I was going to retire at Arnold, because again, I am the senior in this crowd and I've been in the business longer than all of you here. And I just, you know, they say you, I think they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but that is not true. I reinvented just based on the sort of, yes, maybe there's a little imposter syndrome that goes on. Like, can I really do this? Am I capable of going on my own? I've had a team around me my whole life. But honestly, it was the greatest move I ever made. I did not have anything lined up. I'll reinforce for you. I did it without a plan. I walked in not knowing I was going to resign that day. And that is the scariest thing I ever did. And I just went like this and said, have faith in yourself. Hold on to the skills you've acquired. Do not be afraid, because this cliff you're jumping off of is either going to be the greatest adventure or you'll land on your feet somehow and figure it out. And I did. And I will say that I never looked back. And so that's the beginning of my next question for everybody. Not everyone has to answer this, but if you have a sort of a moment that you say that is the highest of highs or the lowest of lows in your time doing this, talk about it. And also, would you ever consider taking a salaried job ever again? I leave myself open to that thought, but every time it's come near me, I've been like, no, thank you. I would like to ask somebody here who has a high and a high story and a low and a low story, just please talk about it. And then also talk about, yeah, I think I'd consider it, or no, I wouldn't. Because you've all made comments about, I've squeezed in the thing that I really wanted to do. I've allowed for something else to come into my life, and which I never could have done before. So I want you to talk a little bit about that. Anybody want to start? Armin, I knew you would.
So I think the high, one of the biggest highs for me was a big part of my practice is actually work with quite a bit of private equity firms. And one of the private equity firms I work with is KKR, which is one of the largest in the world. They have about like $900 billion in assets. And I had finished a project with them, and one of their senior partners came to me and they were like, we have another one for you. And it was at that moment where I realized, oh, I'm actually really good at this. And I think that it's hard for me to say this in this house where we are, because I would not be here if it were not for Digitas and Havas. But the tough part about agency life is it's so hard to consistently feel validated. And to have clients like KKR say to me, come back and do this again, was huge. And I think the other big one is, having so many colleagues and friends like Barb, like Whitney, like so many people refer me to people is huge. I will never forget, actually. First of all, I do remember the day you resigned, because I was there. I was in the building when you resigned at Arnold. That was totally crazy. It was the craziest thing. I was like, what? There's hot gossip right there. Yeah. I was sitting at work. I was sitting at my desk one day, and there was a LinkedIn message, and there was this woman. She was the CMO of this company, and she said, hey, I'm so-and-so. Barb told me I should call you because we need some help. And it was the greatest feeling ever. Like, someone I wildly respect is telling people to come work with me. So that's, these are some of the highs. I think the lows are when work starts to slow down, and it's gonna happen. You know, I had one client working on a project, this was like 3 years ago, and we had crafted out this big scope and we were gonna start in May. Great. And then in April, he called me and he was like, hey, can we start in September? And I was like, you know what? Yes, because I want to be low key for the summer. And that was that. And then in August, we started talking and he was like, they pulled the budget. And that was my Q4 project. And I remember that month of like, holy crap, like, what am I going to do? And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the breadwinner in my house, right? Like, I would not be here if it was not for my husband, and his health insurance, which I want to be very clear is a huge portion of my success. But he just looked at me one day and he was like, it's going to be fine. And I was like, okay. And it was. So yeah, you know, you have to learn how to deal with those moments.
Anybody else want to?
Okay, so I would say my highest of highs, and this is actually happening right now, which is nice, but you know, sometimes you get hired for a project from an old employer and you end up making a lot more than what you were doing when you were there, which is really nice. So I'm about to start a project, which I'm really excited about, and that will take me through probably the end of the year. At the same time, I'm going to be probably like very much a realist, which is financially, it's really scary. So my husband is also a freelancer. He's a writer. And there have been times where things fell through or the project didn't come in. And by the way, it is a lot of hustle. So on top of managing existing clients, you're constantly pitching business. And when you have an hourly rate that's perhaps high because of my experience or what I've done, not every company is ready to pull that trigger for a high hourly rate. And so often there are several rounds and many conversations and then indecision or postponing another quarter or another half a year. And there have been times where it is really cold blood freaking out moments where you're just wondering, how am I going to pay for healthcare? And I'm just going to be completely honest. It's not easy. It's not always one thing after another. I think that I'm not saying it's different than anything that they're going through, but I do think that when you have a high hourly rate and it's not as simple to communicate and easy to understand about what marketing is, brand strategy is a little bit like it's the long game, and not everyone's ready for the long game. And so, to be fair, financial insecurity has been a concern of mine at times, where there'll be like a month or two, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so that's just kind of the long and the short of it. Is that's the low, which is the lack of stability that comes with this work. And when you think something's going to be there and sometimes it disappears or gets pushed out or postponed, I mean, there's an unsteadiness there that you have to have pretty thick skin, and like iron guts. I don't know how else to put it. Like, you have to be ready to like dig in. But that's some reality of this kind of work too.
Just to like what Whitney said, there's a degree of fortitude that I think everyone here knows that you need to have, because the lows can be low. And I'm not going to steal your thing because you got to say that's great. The lows are tough, and it's when you're waking up and you realize that there's nothing in the book, and then you realize that what's going to happen and how is this going to come to me, and then you have to stop and be like, you know what, I control this. So I have to go out. You've got to hustle and call people, and that's kind of a low point. But then the flip side is, and this is like connected, when I started, and even just last week, I'll sit at my computer and be like, okay, I've got to like talk to someone, I got to network, and I'll stress about sending the email, and then I'll send it, and then 30 seconds back, I get a response. And it's just like, when you have a good group of people around you that want to support you and see you succeed, that's really, you can have 3 of them and it makes up for the 500 people that you have on LinkedIn. And that's the force that's going to keep you going, and they're going to keep referring you. I call it like Barb, when she was doing her thing, and I'll be honest, but like, what the F is happening over there? Like, we're going to become a fractional? Like, no one had heard about it at all. And then I sent her an email. She sat down with me and she gave me the playbook. And she's like, this is what I would recommend. This might not be for you, but this is how you might want to think about it. And that's the biggest high for me. Everyone that comes to your side of the table that helps you out. And then also the clients that you do good work for. And this is going to sound like narcissistic, but like, you do the good work and it's not like the other people. They're like, Chris, that was good. I want you to go work on this. And I want you to do this. So those are the highs that continue, that make it exciting.
Rachel, I think did you want to jump in? Okay. We've been starting to talk a little bit about the nitty gritty of this role. And Rachel, I know when we first spoke, you had a bunch of sort of, let's not forget this, this, and this. And I love the nitty gritty. This is the real deal. I mean, when you wake up in the morning and you're pacing the house, like, oh, there's nothing on my calendar, what do you do? Or when you are saying, I really need the money, but this client is not someone I want to work with, what do you do? And I think the nitty gritty, like give a couple of examples about the nitty gritty, and anyone can jump on in about the nitty gritty of the role. And Rachel, I know you had a few of them. I'd love you to start on this one.
Yeah, I have a lot of nitty gritties. I just think freelance sounds very glamorous because you can wake up when you want to wake up and you can work when you feel creative, but it's not a 9 to 5 because it's so much more than that. You're a salesperson, you're an accountant, you're a biz dev, you're everything. And you're constantly networking, your weekends, your nights. And I said in our meeting, like, I think a really good factor for a freelancer is if you kind of have the rest of your life in a comfortable place where you feel you can have support, because freelancing is so emotional every day. There's a high and a low. And I think like if you're going through something with your relationships or your family or you're moving, it's just very tumultuous. So I think you need like a really stable, safe space. Like every day I complain to my partner about the job and every day he tolerates it. So I think like you need people and places that you feel very comfortable, because it is a lot more emotionally challenging than a 9 to 5, in my opinion.
Anybody else got a little nitty gritty they want to share?
I mean, I think one thing that people underestimate is that it can be isolating, right? I think that, it's funny, like I'm finishing up a head of marketing role and I've been with these people for like 7 months. They're awesome. It's been great. I hired my replacement, whatever. I'm probably going to do 3 more weeks with them. And then all these people are just literally going to disappear from my routine. And it's a little weird. Like and obviously I'll keep in touch with them. But like the CEO of this company, the general manager, like my team, like these people that are reporting to me right now, like they're going to all kind of like fall off, and it's, like we even worked at a company and I ended my role with that firm, with that brand, and that was it. And so it is a little isolating. You do, especially you have to work, if you're working from home, like you have to figure out like how to get out of the house. And my husband works from home, so we constantly are seeing each other. That's another problem. And so I think that's one really big thing. I think the other like nitty gritty thing that I will share is the question of how much to charge. Yeah. I think that is the question that I get the most often. And I think there's 2 ways to think about it. I think you can take your current comp and do analysis and multiply this and divide by that and get to a number. And that's one way to do it. I think the other way to do it, and I will take no credit for this, I had the great honor of being on a board of directors with Cindy Gallup, who, if you don't know Cindy, you should be following her on LinkedIn. Cindy regularly tells people that when you're negotiating salary, you should say the highest number possible without being able to laugh. The highest number you can say with a straight face. And it's hard. It's really hard. But once you get good at it, you're like, oh. And then people say yes. And you're like, holy crap, I should have gone even higher. Right? And yeah. So
Plus taxes and fees.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that's the other one that everybody asks me about. And to Fernando's point about like not wanting to talk about money, I'm finishing up my 2024 paperwork, but I'm pretty sure I broke 7 figures last year, and I'm definitely more than double I made anywhere I worked in my entire career. So it can be done. It can be done.
So I think like I feel I've just started. It's only been 2.5 years and I feel I'm still learning. I would say like the nitty gritties in the beginning that just, it took me a hard time and it took me a long time was to find an accountant and the taxation. And like, I was like S Corp and C Corp and LLC and like trying to figure that out. So just trying and getting a right accountant, the nitty gritty of that, it took so much out of my plate. Even I think working with clients right now, even like, should it be retainer? Should it be project price? Should it, like all of that nitty gritty was also, it took me some time to figure that out. And, like even the money part of it, it's like same thing, right? Like you have your highs and lows. And, right now my accountant is talking to me about like strategies because we hit 7 figures as well. So again, the high of this year, having that right partner and reaching out to your network of getting those right partners in place to help you through each year or each month or each highs and lows.
Yeah, at the end of my second year, I had been using my original tax guy, who I loved when I was like a normal person. And then, now that I'm a weirdo, I met a new accountant and the guy was like, you are completely set up in the wrong way. He refiled my first 2 years of taxes and I got $27,000 back. So when I say, and when Neeta says, you have to find the right people, you have to find the right people. It's not that straightforward.
I'm going to tag on because Armin gave me the name of his, I don't know if you remember that. I've been using your accountant. I'm hoping I'm using your new accountant, not your old one.
You are using my new one.
Good, thank goodness.
Brandon.
That's right.
Yeah, Brandon's the best.
So thank goodness. The other thing I'd add, and this is actually something else I learned from Armin. Armin's a huge resource for me, but I was finding that the new business process was just forever. Like it was like, oh, we should have you meet with this person next, and then this person next, and then we'll let you know. One thing that he has said, and you're gonna have to correct me because you're next to me, but it's like give them 3 hours and be really straight up front. Say, what I typically do is I begin to engage 5 hours. I give 3 now. So 5 hours for Armin, but I will give you 5 hours. You can use it how you'd like. I'd love to meet members of your team. I could also bring you some thinking, but it's beginning to demonstrate your value, and how they use that time is at their discretion, but it gives them a sense of framework and finite kind of use or abuse of your time. And I think that's really helpful. And that's something I took away from one of our earliest conversations when I stepped into this, and I've continued to use it, and it's been helpful.
Fernando, do you have any nitty gritty you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that for me, it was really a change of mindset in terms of when it came to that stuff, and creatives are not, they're kind of notorious for not caring about accounting or money or things like that. But I feel like it was a skill set that I had to learn, and now I feel like it's something that you should kind of take pride in, almost taking a break from the creative side of things, and because that this is helping build your business, and so I try to look at it as a positive when I do those nitty gritty type of things. So.
The one thing I want to say, I don't want to scare people away though from some of this nitty gritty. Like, the funny thing about like the money, like once you set it up, like everything in my life goes through QuickBooks, goes through 2 credit cards, goes through 1 checking account, and it's all there. You just have to figure it out. And once you figure it out, then it's done. Like I finished my income statement for 2024 in like 45 minutes, but that's because it's set up. So I don't want to scare people off. But you gotta realize that you have to invest the time up front to figure it out. Like,
yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because like I'm not a huge numbers guy, and I was intimidated by that when I started out. Everything is solvable, and you can talk to someone to figure it out. And for me, I just think of myself those first days when I started the business, and I was looking for clients and looking for revenue, and then figuring out LS, all that stuff. You can figure it out. It takes some time, but you can do it. It's not like we've cracked the code, because I'm still sitting here and I've got questions. Like you said, a couple of things. I'm like, holy crap, I got to go talk to my guy, but that's the whole thing. You've just always got to listen. You'll pick up something along the way.
All right, we're going to pivot now. And for each of you on this panel, we'll be back with your best piece of advice. And for now, I want to talk to the hiring managers and recruiters. And let's talk about what you're seeing. As we talked about earlier, it's changed. I'd like to ask you all to talk a little bit about what you're seeing out there in the marketplace so that you can give us sort of a landscape view for everybody here. We'll start, Michele. How about you want to start with you, Michele?
As far as what I'm seeing, there's definitely a shift for organizations to move towards hiring more from the gig economy and more from freelance. It's a solid way for organizations to control their labor costs. And so if they're looking for a trim or they're looking to manage things a little tighter in that space, then freelance subcontractors become very attractive. And so I think as predicted and as we're reading in a lot of the trade mags, et cetera, there will be growth in the gig economy. That being said, I think what we're also seeing is 2024 might not have been the most fruitful year for everybody in the space. And so, there is some connectivity to how the market's doing, to growth in the space. And so that's something to also be cognizant of, that there's that sort of pendulum. And we talked about it a little bit already, that you can have sort of a feast or famine period if you're out in this space. And so if organizations are doing well, then they're going to bring on more staffing. And of course, if they're not doing well, that means that there's less opportunity. But overall, I think the philosophy is definitely shifting to bring in more freelance or subcontractor talent and keep the full-time staff at a minimum.
Yeah, I agree with what Michele says completely. And we both worked in big agencies. And I just feel like even 5 years ago, freelancers were what you brought in a crunch. You brought them in to help on a pitch. It was like a 2-week assignment. And quite honestly, you were pressured to not need freelancers. It was like, try to get the staff, working more efficiently so you didn't have to invest in it. And now there's a big switch. And what I'm seeing, especially for a lot of our clients and a lot of corporate clients, is they're building their staffing plans right up front with this blend of full-time hires and freelance. So yeah, you always had a freelance budget that you tried not to spend. Now it's like, it's starting out right in the beginning, dividing up how you're going to use this talent plan. And I think that the modern marketers and some of you are realizing that you can actually, it's not this idea of flexibility is really an advantage that you have, but it's a necessity to get the right people on the right work. And you can get, the specialized services that you need using fractional help. You can, it's just, I feel like the whole, and Barb kind of said it in her intro, but to me, like, I believe the future of the workforce is freelancers. Like I mean, maybe you would freelance somewhere and it would convert to a full-time job, but I just think the companies that I'm talking to and the talent organizations around the world, everybody's looking for this help. So I think it is the best time to do this. And if you're thinking about it, or if you're already doing it, you're ahead of the curve. Like, I just think it's where it's going.
One thing I learned after getting laid off is recruiting's broken, guys. It's absolutely broken. This is not the recruiting that I knew my entire career. This is a new animal. I hate it. It's icky. The client that I was just working with, they had this job post for an experienced strategist, and they got 1,900 applicants. And I said to them, I go, do you want me to go through them? And she said, that's not what we hired you for. We hired you to find us somebody. So, but in the interim, how is the work going to get done? And that's where you guys come in. So to be able to jump in and with that skill set, we are heading towards this gig economy. It's going to be really real. And what's great about Boston community and Boston advertising is that we are incestuous. We're a small knit group. So lean on your network for help, ask for help. Oh my gosh. Wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you actually networking and asking for help. And so, but yeah, recruiting is definitely broken. So, and I don't know what the answer is at this point.
I'd like to ask you three just to give advice here a little bit on sort of, or maybe talk a little bit about what you're currently looking for, specifically in your individual roles, not in general, but you, Michele, for today, you, Sarah, for today. Who do you look for? What do you look for? What are the capabilities or the types, tenures, length of time, all the assignments? Just give a sense of what's out there.
Sure. So being in agency world, I still am very much looking for the hired gun, the block and tackle, somebody who's going to come in either to fill a gap, somebody to help with the workload, that special skill set that we just don't have internally. But what I'm looking for is more mid-level talent, mid-level to senior talent to come in and really embed themselves with the internal teams so that they are like an extension of our core team. And so we, as a resource manager, I love having a roster of people that we've worked with before, that we know, we trust. My teams like them, they get to know us, how we work, our systems, and then I can have my frequent flyers and they can come in and there's efficiencies gained there. So I love that. Certainly for new business, sometimes we just need a little extra support to bring the best to the prospective client. But very much still in the block and tackle realm. And that's what I see the most of. And because of my background, it's mostly art directors, copywriters, designers, developers, etc.
You go. Okay. Well, what I would say is, I talked a little bit about at the beginning about Hatch and how we're a blend between staffing solutions and agency work, but whether I'm trying to find a freelancer for a client project at Hatch, or I'm trying to hire a media director in Phoenix right now, if anyone knows anyone, whatever I'm trying to do, I'm always trying to find like exactly the right person for that project. And I think that that's something that, if you've never written long form copy for a website, like you're not that person that I need for that web job. And so I think like really matching the right person with the project is what I'm looking for, no matter what the brief is that I have.
So the levels that I place are more director and above. But one of the interesting things that I always look for is a person. So I place UX folks and creatives, but a good storyteller, but not so much a culture fit, but a culture add. So can they do the role immediately? But are they the talent that can attract better clients, bigger clients to the company and blossom the company and blossom the team?
I know that we've said that the money thing is hard to talk about, but this side of the group has talked about it. Would you care to touch on the money part of it at all in any way?
I would be delighted. Now I gotta send this invoice. So I had very lofty goals. I was like, I'm charging 30%. That's my fee, period, the end. And then I got talked down because everyone's like, there's so many recruiters out there. There's so much competition. These guys can find, there's so much talent, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You need to come down, you need to come down. So then my client was like, we're gonna do a flat fee of 25,000. And I said, absolutely not, no way. So I kind of like negotiated back and forth. There's a lot of negotiation. I love that. We came to a mutual agreement where I chose a specific fee for multiple placements in a specific category or a single fee for a single hire. And it worked. They accepted it. But don't back down. Know your value. It's impossible to put a price tag on your value, but just know your value and say it and be quiet and just let them come back to you and then negotiate.
All right, I'm going to do, this one is going to be, I'd like everybody to do this. And I would like you to really think long and hard about the best piece of advice you have. You've given a little, but I want you to really think about, if you had to tell somebody the best piece of advice that you're sort of your hack that you've learned throughout this whole thing, give it. So I'm going to start at that end since you guys are talking. Let's start with Michele first and we'll come back this way. Sorry,
Thanks.
Rachel, you'll be last. You have more time.
I think my best piece of advice for anybody working in this space is you have to deliver on what's agreed upon, right? By the time the agency gets to bringing in somebody, there's contracting that's happened, rate negotiation, equipment. So there's time and energy invested in bringing you in. And so I would say, look closely at the brief, understand what you're getting into before signing on. Make sure you've got that availability. If they need you 40 hours a week, make sure that that's something that you can do. Because at that point, the agency's kind of counting on you. Now, things change. Okay. So like client can totally pivot. All of a sudden it's a rehaul instead of like a small edits or whatever. Happens all the time. And so I think if something becomes sort of outside of scope of what you've agreed to, then you just have to say something and say it as early as you can, because there's always a solution and resource manager is going to be the one to help you sort that out. But we want to just catch that early so that no one gets ahead of over their skis, so to speak. And so I would say, if you take on a gig, deliver on that gig. And that's how you get, in my opinion, that's one of the reasons why you get the call back.
I always advise my candidates to interview them as they are interviewing you, interview them too. Make sure this is the place you want to be. Make sure this is the job that you really want. Sometimes what's in the hiring manager's mind doesn't really translate well to the job description. And then you get into the role and you're like, this isn't what I signed up for. So absolutely make sure that you interview them as they're interviewing you and ask for help.
That's okay. I have a lot of advice. She said one piece, huh? I know. Well, all right. But I do think you should show your book around. And when I say book, I don't mean just creatives. I think everybody should share the work that they've worked on. And I think you should be like your own PR person and network like crazy. And the thing about networking, we talked a lot about Boston and how everybody helps each other. And I can remember I never worked at Arnold, but I remember when Arnold won the Volvo pitch and I was overjoyed running around the halls where I worked, and everybody, or not everybody, but some of the leadership wasn't happy with me being so overjoyed about Arnold's win. But I knew that was going to help Boston retain and bring good talent here. So I think you should really help each other. If you get calls for projects in your book to refer another freelancer, but I'll stop there. I could go on and on, but lots of advice.
So this is working, right? Yeah. So my advice is for people who are thinking of making the move. And something that really helped me, like having a background in neuroscience, I knew that, it's that fear that holds you back. Like two things that the human brain hates is change and uncertainty. So, and your brain is going to do everything possible to protect you from that. So that's one of the things that I knew. It was like, this is change and this is uncertain. And my human brain is going to stop me from doing that. How do I counter that? And one of the exercises that I did, which I was talking about, was I sat down with my husband, sat down with a financial advisor. We looked at our monthly expenses every single month. We added another 25% because we have 2 young kids. They get into trouble, everything. We're like, just in case. And we saw that. And then I told my husband, this is the number we should be okay to say goodbye to. If nothing comes out, we should be okay to say goodbye to. And I'm going to reframe it that this is the number that I got an education. So I think having that number written down gave me the peace of mind, and then a plan around it that really helped me make the move. Otherwise, I don't think I would have made the move at all. It was just too scary. So that's my piece of advice.
It gets harder as it goes down the line because but I'm actually going to go, I am going to kind of give a nod because I was going to say, as much energy as you're thinking about investing in client work, you definitely have to plan for, and create space for being a marketer for your own brand, right? And it's all about how do I continue to have awareness of my kind of game and what I can bring to the market, but continue to kind of bring people into the business, that biz dev part of it. So I think it's easy to kind of say like, yes, I'm going to sign up for 25 hours with this client and then 10 hours here. But when those projects end, you know, that again was that fear I mentioned before. So you have to be thinking about always applying a certain amount of your time to being your best marketer, bringing all those chops to bear so that you have a nice steady base and pipeline to build from. Oh, you don't need this.
Yeah, so the thing I'm gonna share, it's relevant for everyone in the room, but it's probably more relevant to some of us who are a little bit more tenured. I think you have to spend the time to figure out and be very selective about what you want to be known for. I was talking with someone, I've been doing this for 25 years. I can do a lot of things. I can run agency reviews. I can build CRM. I can do this. I can do that. None of those things are on my website. None of them. On my site, it's very clear. This is what I do. I am known for fixing companies. That's it. No one hires me in good times. Nobody. And that's my jam. And that's, you have to. Yeah. I mean, literally, one of my new clients, I started talking to them. They were like, just so you know, we're down on revenue 30% year to date. I was like, oh, okay, that's bad. Like, that's not great. So we'll fix that. But, the thing is, it's really hard you want to write on your site or LinkedIn or wherever, like, I can do this and 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 this. And the problem is that when it's all of that, Whitney doesn't know how to refer me to people.
Yeah.
Barb doesn't know how to refer me to people. People don't know how to talk about you if you do all these things. And the reason why I think this is super, super important, and I have huge respect for everybody on this panel for doing all the hustle that they do. I can actually say that every single piece of work that I have had is a referral. I actually have not hustled. So you got to think about like how to get yourself out there in a very clear way so that people know how to talk about you.
I think for me, it's a lot of the themes here are very consistent with the way that I was thinking of answering the question. But to be honest with you, to take a step back with this new company that we have, YoPro, in doing all the research with Gen Z and doing research and interviews with them to launch the company and then working with them on the job performance. I think a lot of it becomes like, you got to think about what role does work play in your life? Like in terms of priorities, where would you rank it? Is it in the top 5? Is it in the top 3? And I think that helps you think about if you're on the cusp of thinking about doing something fractional, that actually can help you, because although work is needed and we all need money, part of it's freeing you up to do other things and not have it be such an anchor on your neck. I think for myself, if you asked me a couple of years ago, I'd say work is the most important thing. And now it's changed a bit. And I say that because fractional is a way to do that. And as long as you're able to keep perspective, you're open to different opportunities, you're open to looking at yourself and saying, you know what, I never thought about doing that, but I think I have the skills to do it. If not, I can bring someone in. I think that's really important. And I think for myself, and it's only been 3.5 years, but on this journey, I've changed who I am. And I like the fractional guy versus the guy that did the 9 to 5.
Yeah, for me, I think, from a creative perspective, I think I take some solace that word of mouth is still king. It's similar. I haven't been on job boards or anything like that for the past 5 to 6 years, and it's all been referrals and things like that. And with all this connectivity that we have today, I feel like that's a really great thing. Actually, Dorothy was the person who hired me as my first creative job ever. So it's a pretty cool thing.
Oh,
The other thing I would say, from a creative point of view is to really, you have to communicate your passion about what you do, whether that through word of mouth or through the easiest way that we have. The easiest way to do that is through artwork and making things or writing things. And so for me, a lot of the jobs I've gotten have been through work that wasn't client-based. And it really gets the client thinking about what's possible to make with this person. And, that's led to a lot more creative work for me. So.
This one might seem like a no-brainer, but I think it applies more to the less tenured. I think confidence is a huge piece, and I've always struggled with it. I think because I started freelancing and being my own boss at 25, and I really struggled with asking for the amount that I thought I was worth and taking those creative risks and communicating with people who have been in the business for so long and are so impressive. And I don't have 20 years in the business accomplishing amazing things to show for it. So I really had to rely on telling myself I'm good at my craft and I'm worthy of X, Y, and Z. And I think I still struggle with it. And Whitney gave me great advice earlier before the panel and said, you deserve a seat at this panel. Like, even if your experience is different, it's still valuable, and we can learn something from you and you can learn something from us. So I think it's just like an ever expanding thing, no matter where you are in your career.
Value. It's a word I'll lean into a lot. I'll give a two-part piece of advice. If you're on the cusp of deciding to do this and when you are doing this, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. The first is, if you are thinking of doing it, like I said in the beginning, it was a choice I did not make. It was made for me and I needed to make some money, so I did it. But I get called a lot to talk about this, and I would welcome any phone calls from anybody to help if I can. If you think I can help you, I will try to help you. But I had this one woman call me recently, very senior, and she had been having a very difficult time finding employment in a senior level role. And, I can relate to that. And I just thought, the bigger your title, the fewer of them that exist in the marketplace. And you want what you left. You want what you left at. You want to sort of, unless you decide to go pivot completely. But, if you were a CMO, you want to be a CMO again. And so she called me and said, I'm really looking, but it's been a year and I can't find it. So I'm thinking I'll go do contract. I said, tell me why you want to do that. And the answer was, well, I don't really, but I need money. And as soon as that conversation hit me, I was like, okay, we got to have a conversation. You don't just go do freelance contract CMO roles unless you're really committed to it and passionate about it. First of all, they're going to sniff you out in a second compared to the 1,000 other candidates they have for those roles. And they're going to say, you seem desperate or you seem uninterested in this real role. So if you are in the position where you're thinking of doing it, get yourself in the position that you're going to commit to it, have intention in it, really decide that's the way I want to build my life around this. I want this to be a part of my life, not my whole life, but I want this to be something I'm great at. Don't do it as I'm just going to do it until someone calls me for the real thing. No, that doesn't mean when that contract that you take that you've given it all you can ends and you're contractually finished with that scope of work that you can't say, all right, let me go do a full time. I'll use that little lily pad that I had and use that for experience and now apply it and see if I can go find a full-time salary gig. But do not do this unless you are so intentionally interested in it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will suck at it. And I cannot tell you this enough. It's a real bona fide, awesome career to be part-time fractional freelance consulting. It's awesome. Don't go do it if you don't want to. Now, once you've decided and you're in it, this was a real life experience. I was being recruited again, like these guys. Many of all of my stuff has been referral. And I got a call from somebody who said, we have a 6 to 12 month CMO role. We are looking to sell our company. We need you to come in and help us drive our acquisition engine so we look really good for sale. There is no CMO job for full-time at the end of this, unless somewhere along the line we decide not to sell. And then we will keep you on if you're doing a great job. Are you okay with not getting a full-time job out of this? Because we've been talking to people who are taking this job as if this is like definitely going to turn into something. And I want to say to you right now, what's your thoughts on that? And this is my advice to you. This is the mindset. I said, I am really interested in fractional work and a 6 to 12 month contract because that's my business model. If you come to me at the end of this and we have done so well together and you've decided not to sell and you are interested in me, let's talk then. But in my head, I'm going at this like you're hiring me forever because I can't do a job if I think the end line is 6 months. I have to build this brand for you and drive this acquisition machine for the long haul. I'm not thinking short term. I'm thinking about building your brand because that's your goal. I'm thinking about acquiring. I don't care when it ends. I'm just thinking about the job and what you want out of me. And they're like, wow, that's the answer. So it was popcorners, if you guys all know the triangle chip. And you probably experienced it on JetBlue for the very first time. Popcorners ultimately got acquired within 8 months. So I suspected that my job was over. And the CEO came to me and said, the buyer is PepsiCo, Frito-Lay brands, and we would like you to stay on for the transition, which will take a while. Would you be interested in staying on a role with PepsiCo? And I said, hell no. Because it made me realize I really liked what I was doing. And I think that's what you have to do is you have to go in and say, I'm going to do the best job I can. I am yours. I'm immersing myself. I'm building relationships. Somebody down here said, embed yourself in the team. Do that. Make sure you're in it to win it. Don't worry about the time frame. You all know you're under a contract. You all know that if this is a financial arrangement, they're not hiring you because you're a contractor, they're hiring you for your skills. So give them the skill and forget what your title is. Go in, be a real bona fide partner, contributor, like you're in it for the long haul. Only you know what the end date is. Just go at it and be great at it. And if you do that, your jobs are going to just keep on coming. I promise you, that's how they keep coming. Don't think of yourself, I mean, you are a contractor or a freelancer when you're doing it, but my advice is don't talk about it like that. Talk about it as if I am just really here to help you solve your goals. That's it. So that's my advice. To our lovely panel, thank you guys. Your insight and talent is amazing. Thank you.